Tim Cossins right there. Much has been made, Tim, of the fact the Orioles don't have a bench coach per se this year. And the question is, when they need one, are you it? Are you?
I think we talked about it earlier in the Fan Fest that we're letting this evolve. We have so many good decision makers on the bench, and things are taking shape. I think my main thing is to make sure if Brandon has a question that I have an answer. And I think the rest of the staff's doing the same thing. It's coming along good, actually.
Now, it seems like there's a well-rounded bit of communication that goes on. I mean, I've been in the dugout this spring, and Brandon Hyde's even come over to me and asked me some questions. So I think it's good that the communication is there. I got to know about the talent of your catching core, Tim. Got some good young players. Obviously, Chance Cisco back there, but crucial injury to Austin Wins. Tell us how the development's going in the catching department.
I'm really excited about how the catching's gone thus far. Coming in, I had done my homework with some video, and you know people in the industry, so I knew of the players. I didn't know what they were capable of, and you don't really know until you get your hands on them and get in the cage at 7 a.m. and start working, and the makeup and the chemistry of the group. And these guys have been outstanding. They're working their tails off.
Well, what do you look for though in these catchers? Is it a communication type of thing, a take charge, or a skill set?
I think it's a combination of all of that. The thing I look for first is the personality, the makeup of the group over the individual, and how that, if there's symmetry with those things, then you can build on it. And once you have those things and they're in place, then you can really get to work. And these guys had it, pretty much from day one. And it's been a really, really fun camp thus far with this group, because they've been absolutely knocking it out every single day. And the group's working really hard, having a good time, and not only that, but it's bleeding into this dugout a little bit, in my opinion. That we have some character, so I think that comes from this group of catchers for sure.
Tim, so our fans know you spent 7 years minors as a catcher. You've been handling catchers past 6 seasons, the Chicago Cubs minor league organization. Do you have a philosophy about catchers, pitchers working together, whether the pitcher calls the game or the catchers do? How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like it. Again, I think it's the pitcher obviously has the ball in his hand, and he's got to have confidence in what's coming out of the fingers. So it starts from there, but it's also backed by a ton of information that we get and share. And again, it goes to equity with your pitchers as you work with them, and those guys know that you have their back and that you've done your homework, and then those decisions become easier. And pretty soon you have a situation where there's trust. When there's trust, then you can build on all those things. And it's not always easy, and it's not always fluid, but it's definitely a start when you have the trust of the pitchers.
Zutter picks up the base hit, 1 down. Here is Burns, switch hitter, getting the start in center field.
Yeah, good speed right here from Burns. Hey, Tim, Gary mentioned a little bit about you being part of the Cubs from 2013 to 2018, and in that time, you were the minor league field coordinator. The Cubs actually, at the big league level, had some incredible success, winning the World Series in 16, back to the playoffs in 17. But you got to witness it from the minor league side. Here in Baltimore's camp, are there any similarities, or is there anything or 2 things that you could put your finger on that this team may need to do to get to that position that the Cubs were in 16?
Well, I think there's a number of similarities. I think the first thing is to have a unified battle cry, and what is the goal, and what are we trying to accomplish as an organization, and I feel like that's been consistent since day one, and I feel like there is that same feeling here. I feel like there is there's talent here, and there's a desire to win, and there's a desire to go out and compete, and those are the things that will propel you through this process.
1 ball, 2 strike count, 1 down. Burns, great speed. Going back, Ruiz even with a bag at third base now, swung on and ouch. And you hear a former catcher felt that just the way his catcher did.
I felt that one. I felt that on my toe.
You hold your breath on those?
Every single one.
Really?
Every single one, yeah.
There's so many of those. I've often wondered how you guys who were catchers then and now, how do you get, you just walk these things off, but it's got to hurt for the whole game, doesn't it?
It hurts temporarily. It hurts. It depends on the situation. I think when the adrenaline's in the body and it takes over a little bit, but you just don't want to collect too many of those early, because those become naggers.
1 ball, 2 strike count, runner at first, not a big lead. for Zenner's over there at first base. Down to first, that will be a foul ball, and 1-2.
Tim, this time of year gets pretty tough when you start talking about the cuts that are being made, and some pretty good players end up going down to the minor leagues. In your experience and the messages you give to these younger players that go down, is it good to treat them, well, or do you say you got to go down there and do this and that? Do what you did in spring training. What is that message you send to the young guys?
Well, I think it's different for every guy, and I think it depends on their mindset and their mindset in camp. But I think the whole thing is to get the players to not let up and not have a big dip in preparation and readiness. Just getting them in the same mindset that they brought during camp. And there's always going to be excruciating decisions in camp, and we've had some, and we're going to continue to have some, and that's part of this game. And I think that's a good block there. That a baby. That fires me up. Yeah, the decision making, that part's tough, and that's just part of this business. But I think the turnaround and how quickly these players can move on and keep their edge and keep their preparedness and so forth. That dictates how well they'll perform going out, for sure.
Tim, some have said maybe 3 catchers on this team. Do you see that happening on the opening day roster?
That's a good question. That's a tough question. We haven't really talked about that. Those things are all, I'm sure, coming. My mindset right now is to continue to just bury ourselves in the work and get as ready as we can and try and build on their skills and have as good a time as we can doing it. And, not to duck the question.
That's right.
That's a difficult question. I'm not trying to do that. But, I truly am trying to keep this camp about the work and let the decision-making happen at the appropriate times. And sometimes by just burying yourself in the work, you just keep the group moving forward. And like I said earlier, we have a really good chemistry amongst this group. I'm in love with this group of catchers, and I want to keep it intact and trying to take those things away from it as much as we can. Even though I know for a fact, being a player and what they're going through, I know that they're thinking about it and they're doing the math and all that stuff. I respect all of that. I know how difficult it is. So just trying to steer them towards the work.
All right. Tim, we really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Have a great season, and we look forward to working with you as the year goes along.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim Cossins, he's the Major League Field Coordinator and in charge of catching for the Orioles.